Every generation finds its lifestyle busy as can be. Too much to do and not enough time. Stocking up to feed the family or battling through the traffic, and that's just to get to work. The rush is on. But when the working week is done, then things that make life good really come into play. Interests which give a break from all those 9 to 5 exertions, challenges from which enjoyment comes, whatever they may be. Perhaps a steam train buff, in love with all that puff-puff stuff. The codger, old with fingers rough, who loves the soil and all that leafy stuff. And people who show polished cars, which gleam like these in this Art Deco scene. Or those this film is all about. They who love to build and sail ships and boats made to scale, meticulous in all detail. Well, enough of that. But one thing's for sure, this is an interest needing many skills and concentration. Slapdash has no place in this game. Patience, discipline and dedication, they're all part of it. Because the pleasure comes from overcoming the many challenges. And yes, there are plenty. But when the job is done, it's time to put the vessel to the test. A nervous moment when hopefully your effort will be seen sailing at its best. For members of the Hawke's Bay Model Marine Club, the sailing venue is part of Napier's Anderson Park, quite a large park at Green Meadows. Popular with families letting youngsters meet the wildlife, who seem to put up with human beings and their weird habit of throwing scraps of food everywhere. This pond is where boaties gather to see what the other guys and gals have done.
Oh, yeah, well, a sail winch takes up that one to start with. Yeah.
Well, two, but there's actually 3 functions. That's the on. And if the water fills up to the bilge above 1.5 inches,
Pump goes on.
that one flashes. And then if the battery voltage drops to 4.5 volts, that one flashes.
But nice as this pond looks, it's not all plain sailing. Because between late October and early February each year, the pond becomes infested with weed. And you can imagine what that does to the props of powered boats and the keels and rudders of yachts. Tidying the verges and clearing weed was in the old days difficult, although not as difficult as it was to get volunteers to do the job, and no wonder. Essentially, the technique then was to take out on the inflatable a modified old bed frame, to which was attached a long rope, so it could be pulled back to shore, collecting weeds as it went. While Len got busy with the rake, head honcho Noel rowed out with the weed recovery device, submerging it prior to the team pulling it back to shore, dragging weeds along the way. Then back on shore, Noel and the team had to get the muck off the frame. A rather yuck job.
Got a load on it.
when I had to put the foot on the gas this time instead of the brake.
Today, the system is better, as now the council keeps a closer eye on weed growth and today clears or controls weed from time to time. And once the Hawke's Bay Model Marine Club was established, it was able to work with the council to facilitate better sailing conditions. The Hawke's Bay Model Marine Club was formed in 2009 when a small fraternity of model yachting enthusiasts sought to revive interest in a model yacht squadron. Susan Donaldson is the club secretary and fills in a bit more detail.
Well, the main idea was to bring everyone together and to increase the enjoyment of the hobby, and then we had to work out how to give equal opportunity to both groups, those who sail and those who operate powerboats, and there's a wide range of vessels amongst the membership of the group. So we solved the problems with giving the powerboats priority on Saturdays and sailing and battery operated craft on Sundays. And that seems to work well.
Building and sailing scale model vessels presents a heap of challenges and opportunities to test one's skills. So don't think these are toys. They're not. In many cases, they are finely crafted ships and boats, scaled down in size, with many showing exquisite detail. And if one's interest is primarily in building the ship or boat to a given design, then modifying it to suit one's particular inclination, it's an exercise to test design sense and craftsmanship. Some relish this type of challenge, like Neil here, who tends to specialise in vessels of the 1930s. Absolutely top work, and here's one of his efforts, a classic of the 1930s. This is a model of a 32-foot Hacker craft, introduced in 1932, designed by John L. Hacker. Boats were Hacker's life, his designs of fast-moving mahogany and steel sculptures in his runabout cruisers and races, reigning supreme in the 1920s and 1930s. Engines of the day tended to be a mite unreliable, so boats of this size often carried a mechanic. And here he is, spanner at the ready. Hacker carried on designing and building boats until he died aged 84 in 1961. This Hacker craft was the ultimate design, a fitting tribute to the man and the succession of groundbreaking wooden powerboats that is his legacy. Another gem is Rosemary, a 1925 boat which was entered in 3 events in the 1925 anniversary regatta. She had plenty of power and travelled fast for what appears to be a conventional round-bottom displacement hull. It was owned by Leon Warne, although it was F.B. Cadman who raced it in that 1925 event. This vessel, Jaunty Rider, shows the influence of the American excursion craft of the 1920s and 1930s. Lots of brass and polished wood, and its design is influenced by the harbour ferries found at Tauranga right through the 30s, 40s and 50s. It's not an exact replica, the design freedom allowing an amalgam of artistry and function interwoven from centuries of evolution. It hardly needs saying, but if you've put in all the effort required to produce a neatly done boat, you will surely be careful in storing and handling it. But accidents do happen. Just ask Noel.
What happens when you slam it in the door of the car?
Maintenance, of course, does need to be done.
Yeah.
Problems can arise from moisture in the electronics. And then there's the general care of the hull and rigging. And the advantage of belonging to a group is that there's usually someone who can help out or advise.
As long as it keeps the water out of the interior, that's all I'm really worried
Members of the Hawke's Bay Model Marine Club meet every now and then, when there's a need, but not necessarily every month, with the management committee meeting 4 times a year. And meetings comprise maybe club business, helping solve a problem someone might have, or talking over plans for a day's activities on the pond. And yes, it does happen, listening to someone grizzling about something that's bothering them. And then there's the socialising aspect too. These days, meetings are held at the house of one of the members, but if a bigger venue is needed, it could be held in a small hall or school. As here, when Commodore of the club Noel Symes was about to give members a stunning surprise: the club's acquisition as custodians of this tug. All this came about when the Napier Boys High School, who had been gifted the vessel by the man who made it, Philip Moore, decided it would be better looked after by the Hawke's Bay Model Marine Club, knowing the school could always ask for it back if they needed it. Noel was asked what he thought at hearing the request.
Scary thought initially, and we said to him, okay, well, what's got to be done to it? And although it's complete in its present form, it hasn't got a motor in it, it hasn't got the radio control gear in it, and really that's all we have to do is set it up with the power units, radio control gear, and it's up and running. It is a kit, and he's still not sure whether it's a Dean or a Billings kit. It's all planked, the hull is all planked, everything's there complete, ready to go. All we got to do is wire it up and get it on the water. Some of the gear is already in here. There's one servo for the rudder. The rudder fitting itself is already in there. Basically all we really need to do is set it up so that we've got rudder, the radio gear in here, and one engine to go in there. And there's not a great deal to actually do, but I will say this, he is a master of his construction.
And so, another fine-scale model to add to those which members sail at Anderson Park. Amongst the vessels sailed at Anderson Park, there's a wide range, from the quiet and graceful to the sleek and powerful, an impressive gathering of style and muscle.
This boat is a hydroplane. It's designed in such a way to make it run fast, and to do that it has as low a drag as possible. The deck has been taken off the boat and it's cut open, so there's very little wind lift, and the running surfaces are very similar to a full-size hydroplane, although it doesn't look like a full-size hydroplane. When it's on the water, it's behaving like one without the amount of lift that the full-size boats get. The boat's powered by a glow plug engine which runs on methanol, and it has 20% nitro in it with about 16% oil. It's 15cc capacity and puts out about 6 horsepower. So this enables the boat to run at speeds just over 100 kilometres per hour in good water conditions. Flat water is essential to get the high speeds because again it reduces drag, and an air wedge goes under the front of the boat, so there's not much of the boat in the water. The other items in the boat are a radio control receiver with 2 servos to alter the throttle on the motor and to steer the boat. There's a fuel tank, of course, and the tank is pressurised from the exhaust system, and the exhaust system has a tuned pipe on it which boosts the top revs of the motor, and after the tuned pipe there's a silencer to reduce the noise level.
At the quieter end of the scale, you'll find David Lamont and partner Lorraine Stevenson, who've been making scale model ships and boats for a good few years. This tug is one of Lorraine's, as is this Mississippi riverboat. David, on the other hand, has largely done vessels which move by the power of the wind. An example is the Swedish yacht Valdivia Altona, and there are others, even a flying boat. But his latest vessel is a real stunner. A battleship of the Second World War, and not just any battleship, because this is Bismarck. KMS Bismarck was a huge step forward in the rebuilding of the German Navy. At 50,153 tons, it was definitely a dangerous beast, but also elegant of line and curve. The bow was different than earlier ships of this type, and the ship bristled with armaments. 8 15-inch guns housed in 4 armoured turrets, supported by 12 6-inch guns housed in 4 armoured turrets, plus 45 various caliber anti-aircraft armaments. Armour was the key to Bismarck's survival, or so it was hoped. Indeed, 40% of the ship's weight was steel armour, and vast amounts were devoted to belt and decks, along with hull and turrets. Bismarck also carried 4 float planes, although it could carry 6 if needed. The ship was launched in 1939, being officially commissioned in 1940, and was sunk a year later. It carried a crew of 2,200 and had a top speed of 31 knots. Building this 210:1 scale model of Bismarck was a huge task, so many pieces to coordinate and some quite tiny. Keeping track of them all was a demanding task. Sometimes tweezers were brought to the fore, and yes, both David and Lorraine did from time to time get on all fours to find small parts accidentally dropped during construction. So this project presented a minefield of challenges. Very easy to slip up, mess up, or give up. But look at the result. A marvellous 210:1 scale model of KMS Bismarck. Every couple of years there's a Models Expo held at the Napier Boys High School. A glorious display of detailed scale models of all kinds. A bonanza of viewing excitement for all ages, and a good place for the Hawke's Bay Model Marine Club to strut its stuff. And it does. Information about scale model ships and boats, displays of kit sets and finished boats, and publicity videos about this engaging interest. But what the kids like is to see boats where they should be, on the water. As with many clubs which cater for those with engrossing part-time interests, the Hawke's Bay Model Marine Club has its socialising aspects, and in 2012 held their first summertime family day, still at Anderson Park, but thanks to the cooperation of the Hawke's Bay Model Engineers Society, were able to use the smaller pond near the railway. A great way for families to enjoy Hawke's Bay's summer weather. A wonderful environment made for family fun, enjoying the world of scale model ships and boats, and the railway. Real relief from the daily grind, and a feather in the caps of members of the club who over the years have helped it grow and prosper.